Thank you again so much for coming back this year as well to the AVPN conference. It's really appreciated.
My pleasure. I hope that I can join you again in person this time next year.
I hope so. So, Jose, we're in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. What is Standard Chartered presently focused on?
This is a global shock, which is affecting all of our lives, all of our societies and our economies. So certainly something like nothing we have seen in our lifetimes. And we as Standard Chartered, we're very much focused on preserving the health and safety of our staff, because that's key to our resilience as an organization, supporting our clients and customers throughout our footprint the best way we can, and also supporting our communities and especially the most vulnerable sectors in our communities.
Standard Chartered is such an important player in the financial industry across the globe. And with the banking industry playing such an important role to keep the economy running while the world is in a period of lockdown, I would like to understand from you, what is the bank's biggest concern and what assistance is the bank offering during this time of crisis? I think our listeners would like to hear what has gone well in your efforts.
This is a crisis which is very different from the global financial crisis that we experienced 10 years ago, in the sense that banks then were at the root of the crisis. And it was really a banking crisis that morphed into a big financial and economic crisis. Banks were clearly part of the problem. This is different. Banks are starting in this crisis from a position of strength compared to what was the case 10 years ago, and banks can be a part of the solution. Our top priorities have been, first of all, preserving the health and the safety of our staff. We have provided them with the support that they needed in order to guarantee their well-being. So that's one thing. The second is we have been very much on the front line with our clients. We have been listening to them, what are their needs. So we have provided debt refinancing, debt moratoria, payment holidays. We have waived fees and commissions. All of that has been extremely important. And in addition, we have done something which I think is relevant, which is to commit an extra $1 billion to finance those companies which produce goods and sectors which are key, are on the front line to fight the crisis, like health and medical equipment and things like that. And one initiative that we have taken is to create a fund which is being financed by the bank through a donation. That fund is $50 million, and 25 is being donated by the bank, and then we are collecting donations for the other 25, and every dollar of donations will be matched by the bank, so that we hope that that money can be used, and is already being used, to support the sectors and the groups which are most vulnerable and most hit by the pandemic. I think a couple of things that have been critical for us is that we have built a lot in the previous years in order to make sure that we are resilient and that we are agile in the response.
It's truly heartening to hear your response, because I have been talking to so many industry leaders across different sectors. And I think one of the things that has resonated most for me is the fact that everyone has come together saying that this is a problem for humanity. And how do we build a more humane response irrespective of the sector that we come from? And it is so reassuring to hear you say that.
Naina, let me ask you one question. Business will play a critical role in the recovery in terms of jobs creation, investment, innovation, and so on. So how are impact networks like AVPN supporting your members which are also corporates and financial institutions?
You mentioned earlier, Jose, about cooperation and collaboration and how that is even more important now more than ever before. So for networks like ours, what we have tried to do is really see how we can foster this collaboration and this sharing of best practices amongst our corporate members and our financial institutions. One of the things that I think has gone really well through this period is kind of the putting aside of a feeling of competition and of, trying to see how can we come together for the betterment of our communities. And as we look at supporting our communities to restart the economy, how do we not go back, or how do we sort of make sure that, we keep in mind environmental gains, we keep in mind the fact that we need to do better with respect to, how we treat the environment, how do we treat sort of inequities that have existed in the past. So for us in a network where you have both social purpose organizations as well as corporates and financial institutions, it's been about sharing that learning and about trying to sort of build these bridges where we can address the betterment of our communities together. Companies, irrespective of whether they are impact focused, are currently facing tremendous challenges in sustaining their businesses due to a lack of customer demand, due to disruptions to the supply chain, and of course to manpower issues. You talked a little bit about how Standard Chartered is helping them weather these difficult times. I'd love it if you could give us some more information on how you are supporting SMEs to come through this crisis.
SMEs in our markets are experiencing, in a sense, similar challenges, but the situation is very different depending on what the country or the market situation is, health-wise, economic-wise. So what needs are. So this means that our approach has to be differentiated depending on what the specific needs are. But if I try to think of the common threads, banks play a critical role in the provision of financing to these SMEs. And at a time like this, when many of them have experienced a sudden stop of their incomes, they need to be supported. We have experienced in the world, particularly at the end of March, a rush for liquidity from small, medium, and large companies. And this has been unprecedented, really, at this stage. And we have responded by providing this liquidity so that we could keep them alive. Also, in many countries, the government has been very conscious of the need to provide funding to these SMEs for the banking sector. So there's been a lot of collaboration between banks like Standard Chartered and the different governments in joining forces to provide credit to these SMEs, many times with government guarantees and so on. And we think that this is a critical role that banks can play, and as being an emerging markets bank, which has a here for good philosophy, I think that we have to do that. Of course, doing it in a very responsible manner.
You also mentioned, Jose, that sustainable finance can be used to mitigate the social and the economic impact of this crisis, and more importantly, build resiliency against future pandemics. I'd love to hear some of the examples that you have in terms of how Standard Chartered is doing this in the countries that they operate in.
Standard Chartered, well before the crisis, has been very serious about sustainable finance and promoting the allocation of capital from where it sits to where it's most needed. I think that's a key role of financial intermediaries like Standard Chartered, which understand very well the reality of emerging markets and developing economies. And before the crisis, early this year, we undertook a study called Opportunity 2030, which focused on 3 sustainable development goals: health, water, clean water and sanitation, and then sort of sustainable infrastructures like digital and so on. And what we found is that there is a $10 trillion investment opportunity for the private sector in helping fill just these 3 sustainable development goals by 2030. And we are working and will continue to work with our clients, the countries that need the money and the sectors that need the money and those that have the money, to make sure that we mobilize this funding to where it is most needed. And we think is the right thing to do, but we also think is the smart thing to do from the business point of view. And that's a connection that we see. There is a great investment opportunity that is, very helpful for the world. And I think what we need here is collective action. And we're working together with many other private sector players in order to make sure that these trillions that need to be mobilized to help and achieve these sustainable development goals is truly mobilized and ends up where it should.
I think, we share a common purpose of moving capital from where it sits to where it needs. I think this sits in very nicely with AVPN's own mission, which is moving capital towards impact. What I am also very reassured by is what you said, that not only is this the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. And I hope other businesses and other financial institutions that hear you say this are going to follow suit. Thank you so much again, Jose, for joining us in the AVPN Conference 2020, albeit virtually. I hope together, collaboratively, and taking collective action, we and the world can emerge from the pandemic stronger and more united to create a better future for us and our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I hope we all seize the opportunity collectively. Thank you.
Thank you.